moving the needle on founder failure, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Justin Gordon, and welcome to Startup 2.0 by Spark XYZ. Join us each week as we give you access to some of the top investors and entrepreneurs in the country to help you think through and overcome the top challenges that startups face. Today's guest is Shawn, who's the co-founder and managing partner of Pivot CMO. Shawn is a growth hacking expert and the one that startups turn to for help. He's also been through Y Combinator, and at his company Solve was an airport concierge and luxury travel company that grew to 500 plus locations. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so with Pivot CMO, I'm curious to start with here, what type of businesses do you guys typically work with?
Yeah, so it's pretty mixed. I mean, we have, startups that are just starting out or just raising their first, $1 million or $2 million, all the way to, companies that are doing high single digit, even double digit millions of dollars. We really run the spectrum. I think we're kind of rare in the sense that we do a lot of verticals. I think a lot of agencies specialize in like e-commerce or specialize only in, SaaS or something like that. But I think given, my background and the guys that are with me, they've done a really good job of, just diversifying and having the right person for each kind of vertical. And, that's worked out pretty well just from a learning perspective as well. So
was that the plan originally? Like that's what you knew you wanted to work in all those different ones, or just kind of evolved that way?
No, the agency was actually an accident. Yeah, we never intended to start it. After I sold my last company, was just doing a lot of advising and things like that. And a lot of companies would come and just the broad spectrum, ask for advice. And then it turned into, hey, can you just do the marketing for us? Like, okay, why not? And then when we had to do our first hires, we decided, okay, we have enough clients where we have to hire people now. So hence like becoming a real business. Right. We were like, oh, okay, we need someone in this vertical and that vertical. And so it was 100% by accident.
Yeah, that happens sometimes at businesses, I guess. And then with that, so what are some of the things you're typically doing to actually help companies grow?
Yeah, so I mean, I think aside from any of the formal service, a lot of strategy, a lot of advising. So just by nature of like the mentorship that I'll do, through, guys like Lucas that are running Spark or just at a lot of VC funds, I'm always willing to take founder calls. It's really good exercise for me because we learn how to run lean and we get some really good ideas from the founders, and it's also good for them because we're giving them some advice based on experience. So it starts with that. I'm always willing to take a call. We don't charge for that or anything like that, and I think that's an important thing that I'll do for the rest of my life. But then it's the traditional stuff. So Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, really any paid advertising, Amazon as well, is one thing we do, and we do it really well. The second thing that we're now doing is some of the more growth hacky stuff. So we built like a proprietary LinkedIn reach out system. So for B2B companies that don't want to spend on ad spend, we'll manage their prospecting for them. And that's worked pretty well. I mean, this month I booked like 50 or 60 calls for our own agency, just sales calls. So things like that. And then just general like strategy and advice, anything we can do to help companies grow.
Yeah. And I'm just curious too with that, like how did you build the team around that in terms of who's going to handle what responsibilities of that with you guys helping these different companies?
Yeah, it's kind of like hire when it hurts. I think between myself and my business partner, we have such a good broad spectrum of, what we've done in the past. And then we also have a lot of advisors that we can bring in. So if we're not the right fit, I'll always refer out and say, hey, look, like this agency or this person's better at this thing, especially for your vertical. So like, don't use us. It's totally okay. But when we get enough inquiries, we're like, okay, no, we have to get somebody in-house to do this or something like that. So
yeah, but kind of just like saying yes, it seems like to work if you can handle it, if you're the right fit. And then if not, you're just like, okay, well, we don't have the capabilities or it's just not what we do. And you're willing to kind of refer. Well,
marketing is like really important, right? You're like the lifeblood of a company at the end of the day. So it's important that we don't fuck it up for companies. Yeah. And that's how a lot of agencies lose clients. They take clients that really just aren't a good fit and they just really don't know what they're doing and they're learning along the way. So that's how you churn clients. That's how you get a bad reputation, and that's the exact thing we don't want. So it's better to refer than,
Yeah. And then digging into just like the marketing strategy or like how you guys actually work with companies, like what does that process look like from kind of beginning to then working with them, iterating with that? I'm just curious on how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, number one, it's a fit. So we'll typically do a full audit, or most of my conversations don't start as sales conversations. It's more like, yeah, just tell me about what you're up to. Like, let me give you some advice. Do something like that where we'll typically figure out what platforms make the most sense. A lot of companies will have done testing before, so we'll audit it. Because if you spent money on an ad platform or done something, you might have the wrong person. So maybe there's like some hidden gems. So we'll start with an audit and start with advice first. And if, we uncover like, okay, look, there's something interesting here, then we'll go kind of down that road. The other thing that I always tell founders to do is, the first thing you should do is think of every single thing you can do in marketing. So get like a Google spreadsheet out, do one column that's like every single channel, one column that's how much time, one column is how much money, and then prioritize that way, right? So sometimes we're not the best place to start. Like you should be doing all the easy low-hanging fruits that'll take you like a week and no money, instead of like bringing in an agency. So that's also the typical advice on like an initial call.
Yeah, and then with that too, I mean, what are some of those low-hanging fruit type of things that would even include,
Yeah, a lot of email nowadays. It's harder to be growth hacky in general nowadays, just with like anti-spam and things like that. But clients will come to us with a 5,000-10,000 email subscriber lists, and only 1% of the list or 10% of the list is bought. It's hitting that list really aggressively. So built out some automated flows, regularly send newsletters out. One other thing that we've done recently that's such a pain in the ass, but just go and reach out to some of your clients. Like make it a rule that every day you'll reach out to 2 of your customers and just ask for some feedback. You'll learn a lot. So those are 2 things. I think just participating in like a lot of like the group forums and things like that, that's been really good. Just anything that's really, really easy. Like going to events is really easy and you can always meet somebody. So also any times there are like 2 causes, meaning like, yeah, it's for marketing, but it's also good for personal development. That typically works pretty well as well.
So what are the most common kind of like mistakes or that companies are actually making in terms of like marketing and growing their companies? What are some of the mistakes you see, at least with these founders?
Yeah, just the main thing is analytics and tracking. They're not tracking their full funnel. They have no idea what their customer LTV is. They're worried about the wrong metric, for example. So I think it's really easy to be like, I need to acquire a customer for this much. It's like, okay, well, why is that the case? Well, because that's how much I make this much and I'm currently acquiring from this much. It's like, okay, well, what's your conversion rate? What's your bounce rate? Like how many people are going from sign up to purchase? Are you looking at these metrics? And a lot of people are saying no. And the biggest lesson I got on this was the last company I started, we were 1 month into Y Combinator and our metrics were absolutely terrible. We were doing maybe like 30K a month in revenue. And in order to raise any sort of money, we were told that we needed to double that. So we sit down with one of with our group partner, and he says, "Okay, well, tell me this metric," and tell me this metric. We had no idea. So he's like, "All right, come back, in a couple of days and have all this shit ready to go." So we come back and, what's this metric? Okay, well, what is this? And then he's like, "What's your bounce rate on your site?" We said, "It's 99%." He goes, "Okay, this is very simple. Get the bounce rate from 99% to 98%. This shouldn't be that hard, and your revenue should go from 30K to 60K." We're like, oh, okay, that's pretty smart. That makes a lot of sense. And we did exactly that. We optimized our landing page. We didn't really optimize our landing page. We just changed a couple of like words in our landing page. Bounce rate went from 1 to 2, went from 99 to 97.5, and we're at 70K in revenue, right? So it's one of those things where like if you're not looking at it, the simplest thing could be really destroying you, right? Yeah. So that's a really big thing. I also think it's important to understand what your business model is and what how customer acquisition goes into that. So for example, if you're a company that has like a $49.99 a month subscription, so $50 a month subscription, at scale you might lose money on your first month, but if you understand that your customers on average stick around for 5 months, so your LTV is $250. You can really grow the company fast, by acquiring a customer for $100 or $150. But then you need to know how to manage your cash flow. But the thing is, when you know those things, you can go to an investor and tell them like, hey, look, I know I can acquire a customer for $100 at scale. I know they stick around for five months or whatever the case is. This is where the capital is going to go to. And that's a really an easy investment for an investor because they see a clear path to real revenue. You just have to deficit finance your growth a little bit. So just knowing that your metrics and your analytics are set up and then your full customer journey and what the LTV is super important. Yeah.
And with that too, like, obviously that's not for the people you're working with, the businesses you're working with. For your company itself, then it's the same. It's another company. 100%. Yeah. So how are you managing that for your company then?
Yeah. I mean, we've been really lucky that we get a lot of referral. I think you do a good job and people come in. So our customer acquisition cost has been pretty much zero to date. But I think we've done a really good job in modeling out what our customer growth can and will be. So that way we can get like good talent in and train them. So for example, we model out everything. We modeled out our trajectory for the whole year. And in the revenue model, we've included, how many accounts that's going to be and how many people are going to be on it, because we never want quality to suffer, right? So that's really important. We model in churn, and then we basically increase everything for the worst by 10 or 15%. So that way we always have a buffer. So we model that out. We model out, everything down to the last detail. Healthcare, snacks in the office, we model out, right? What rent will be when we're at a certain scale. So everything is in like this really aggressive model. And that way there are no surprises at the end of the day. And if we don't hit a month, then it's okay. Let's adjust the model and like, let's move forward is kind of the idea.
And then with like growth and marketing, what types of strategies or things you're seeing that you're most excited about right now?
Just new channels. I think everyone's rushing into Facebook ads right now, which is not a bad thing, very scalable. But we're having a lot of success on LinkedIn, which will probably become saturated soon. Snapchat is doing some really interesting things. I think email is really good again. Like I think that's been really in order. So I think just number one, people's willingness to try different channels and people's willingness to come to an expert and like just ask for advice. And also people's willingness to switch to digital. I think when I was in college and we were starting our first business, we were like, okay, let's go buy 10,000 stickers and print 1,000 flyers and like, let's just hand them out everywhere. And then you quickly realize like not scalable. We'll get a couple of customers here and there, but when you're in college, if we can make $1,000, that's like amazing, right? Great, But with these digital channels, people are becoming more open and aware about them. And it's a really good way to scale the business really fast. But I also think it's important that you have like an expert, doing it for you.
Yeah. And how does that change things then in terms of how businesses are started now, in terms of knowing all these different channels and the accessibility of them? How does that change how someone like starting a business now can approach growth in a company that you're just starting?
Well, I think it's two things. Number one, you have a better avenue to figure out if you have a business or not, right? So the way I approach starting everything now, because we have some side businesses and some investments and things like that, is we start with how much is it going to cost to acquire a customer at scale? Then what are the cost of goods in the product? And then what should we price the product? And then does the market want the product at that price? So what most people do is they say, I have this great idea I'm going to build it. I'm going to spend a year and a half building it. Shit, no one wants to buy it. And if I want anyone to buy it, it's too expensive for me to acquire the customer, right? So we do everything the other way around. And you can go out nowadays and build something really quickly and then go spend, $1,000, $2,000 on ads and you'll know really quick whether it's going to work or not. Like, can you even acquire a customer? So I think that it's helped decrease the amount of failure time, which is good. You move on to the next thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. Yeah.
And then with growing companies too, obviously you've grown your own companies as well. Like, what are you looking for when you're taking on investors in a company then?
A couple of things. Number one, the goal should always be to get the money. Yeah. Okay. So nowadays you hear founders go, I'm looking for strategic investment. It's like, no, you're fucking looking for money. Okay. The strategic money is all green, right? Yeah. At the end of the day. So I think number one, get the first check, right? Getting the first check is the hardest thing. Like if you're raising $500,000, $1 million, just get the first 50 or 100K or even 25K. Worry about that and stop like spewing like, oh, I don't know if this guy's strategic or not. No, get the money so you can run your business, okay? So I think that's thing number one. The next thing is just, there is like what they call smart money and dumb money. And dumb money doesn't mean like a dumb person. It just means someone that will write you a check and they're going to be pretty hands off. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Get as many of those as you can, especially in the early days. But later on down the road, if we have our optionality of investors, it's can this person make intros for me? Not just in our industry. I think people also focus on strategic investment in the industry that they're in. Like, hey, I'm running a hair care brand. I want somebody from a beauty company or something like that to invest, like some exec. Where I found a lot of help in my career is, let me go find somebody that is really good at growth, or they're really good at hiring people, or they're really good at sales, or they're really good at just making employees happy, and let me get that type of advice from them, because there's a lot more of that going on nowadays than not. Like, for example, for our own business, we're having a hard time hiring. Like, it's hard to find good people, and we're not the best at hiring. So I'll just jump on the phone with people I know that are really good at hiring, and I hope that those people are my investors. And a lot of the companies that I'll advise or talk to, you'll hear like, oh, this advisor is really good at just Facebook ads, and not necessarily Facebook ads for this vertical, but they're just good at Facebook ads, or they're just really good at sales in general. So I look more towards like the skill set and not towards like vertical or industry or anything like that nowadays.
When you're actually looking for an investor then. Yeah. And now we'll take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, Brex. A big heartfelt thank you to Brex, who without their support, this show would not be possible. We've seen firsthand the difficulties accessing basic corporate credit without providing a security deposit or personal guarantee early on. As companies grow, managing expenses has become more difficult and time consuming. which is why we've partnered with Brex to offer a corporate credit card that is not personally guaranteed, offers higher credit limits, provides auto reconciliation, and integrates with ERPs using receipt capture. Brex is the credit card of the startup ecosystem, and we highly encourage you to check them out. And back to the show. And then one thing we kind of glossed over, but you mentioned being at YC and then going from like 0 to like 30,000 like monthly recurring, and then eventually double that to 60, then 70. But what helped you get that initial growth even?
Yeah, so just hustling, honestly. Like, it was ridiculous. We, same thing I was saying earlier, we had this sheet of ideas, like one of them was to email everybody in this vertical, email everybody in this vertical, email everybody in this vertical. And when I say email, like, yes, we did do the mass email, like we were sending at one point like 100,000 emails a day. Like, it was ridiculous, right? Not 100,000, we were sending 50,000 emails a day. Yeah. But it was also like, hey, like, let's go after people, and it was a travel company, so people in luxury travel. So what are the 20 biggest luxury travel companies? We need to talk to somebody, a VP level person or higher at all of them, right? And so we were going to go out and do whatever it takes to do that. And a lot of the initial growth came from those partnerships, and really take care of your first couple of customers that come in, and really incentivize people to do it, because they truly are your biggest advocate. So for example, we were offering like these luxury concierge services in airports. We had this VP that was interested, and she was like, I don't know if I want to offer to my client. We said, okay, look, when are you traveling next? We'll comp everything. And it was really expensive for us to comp it. Like, we gave her like the top tier. For a company with no money, it cost us like $1,000 for 1 hour service, right? So we just gave it to her. We bit the bullet, and then we told her, like, on every booking that you do, we'll give you 20% for the first, however many months. And so basically we were losing our entire margin on it. But after she tried it, she was like, oh, this is really good. And after she was getting, she was very incentivized to actually, give the service to her clients, because she's taking a risk too. She's like, this is amazing. Everybody needs this. And she became our biggest advocate at the company, right? So just taking a risk on people and understanding what motivates people has been like a really big thing for us. And then just doing that like using the same philosophy across different verticals. So, was it expensive? Yes. But in the grand scheme of things, we maybe spent like $3,000 to get this person for a channel that, unlocked $15,000 of revenue every month. Right. Yeah. So that's not a crazy expensive test. Yeah.
And getting those people on board that are actually customers is helpful, because then you can use them to get more customers.
Yeah. Like, that's just exactly like, but even in the agency world, I get the advice from people that always take care of your first couple of customers the best you can. Take them to dinner, hold their hand, do whatever you have to do to make them happy, because they're really important.
Yeah. And with that too, then, so I've seen on your website, I think you have a few different like testimonials, or not, like, what is it, case studies you have on there? Yeah. Like, how much thought is put into like using more of those? So then is that very helpful for getting more business? Like, how does that kind of go?
I used to think that people didn't care about it, but people really read the case studies, right? And I think the thing with the case studies is to be really honest, and the feedback that we've gotten on our current case studies is they're very methodical. Yeah. Meaning, in our case studies, we're not afraid to say really fucked up on our initial strategy, and then we tried something else and that fucked up too, and then now we're at this strategy and it's really working. Because it seems really honest. I think where people go wrong is they're like, we have 100x growth and blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, now you do, but like, tell me about the journey. And when you're really genuine about the journey, people want to work with you, because they understand that like, all the other companies are pitching a certain way, and you're the outlier, right? So it's important to be just genuine and be the outlier. I think is really important.
Did you just pick it up on your own, or did someone tell you about being authentic with all these things, or how did that evolve to that point?
My mom hates the way I talk to people. She's like, you are the most condescending person I've ever, like, the things that you tell people, you're too honest with people, is what my mom says. And I'm like, well, I mean, like, people like, I've had a lot of people like Laurent, who was on, if he's not already on this podcast, he will be on this podcast. He's one guy that I met that he also taught me that, like, was I like, who am I, excuse me? Like, what'd you say to me on the phone? But then I was like, oh my, I got off the phone. I was like, wow, everything this guy said was 100% right. He was the first VC that's willing to be honest with me. And I want to be that guy. Like, I want to be the first guy on the panel to be really honest with people, right? I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh yeah, go spend money on Facebook ads, go do this, go do that, and then come back to me. It's like, no, like, these are all the hardships, these are the bumps that you're gonna hit in the road. Like, please don't make those mistakes, because I made them. And usually a lot of the talks that I'll give nowadays are a synopsis of all the things that I wish people told me, so I would have not wasted all my money and time doing them. So I think it's just like, having gone through this so many times, you realize that just telling the truth and being genuine is really important.
Yeah, and one of the things too I want to go back to a little bit with YC. So young company trying to grow, different strategies obviously for that, then go to an accelerator, that type of program. Like, what was the value added for you going through YC? Do you think other people should approach those types of things as well? I'm just going to want your perspective on that.
Yeah. So originally we thought the value add was you go in and sure, the equity they take seems expensive, but they'll help you raise money. That was the idea. Yeah. Okay. And that's what everybody thinks, to be clear. My first week at YC, I was like, everyone here is a fucking asshole. Like, oh my God, the partners here, they're so mean and blah, blah, blah. And all my founders went home. We all went home. We were like talking. We had a couple drinks. We're like, oh man, we hate it. We hate these guys. Like, they're like, who are they to say? And then by week 2 or 3, you're like, oh my God, they're just telling us everything that we need to hear. And we're actually improving. And it's because they care, right? They're like that parent, that like the tough love parent that's like, hey, look, I know everyone's telling you what you need to hear. And VCs will tell you what you want to hear because they don't want to miss the opportunity to invest in you later on down the road. YC doesn't do that. They'll tell you like, hey, there's no way you're going to raise money on this. Or, hey, that valuation is total BS. Like, or, hey, yeah, this is a pipe dream. Like, you need to change your entire business. And that was a really big wake-up call. And I think afterwards, just that advice has really just changed my life. And then it's allowed me to like help other people as well. And then the community is just really, really good at the end of the day. A lot of like my closest friends are from YC, and a lot of good connections, a lot of good business relationships and things like that. So I'm glad I did it. I think we went in for the wrong reasons. I'll admit that right away, but honestly, it changed my life. I would have paid to be there.
Yeah. Worthwhile investment of time to get into there. Exactly. And one thing is too, like with entrepreneurs, obviously there's so many ways they can learn and grow, and like different methods for growing their business, but also making sure that them personally can help grow so they're a better founder, a better COO, whatever it may be. Like, what are some of the resources you would suggest that founders like look into, or networks they tap into, or anything at all related to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, like having a good rule of like talking to people and being open. So, you know, one thing that I was doing for a while is I would try to get coffee or drinks with like 2 random people a week. Like just someone that it could be someone I haven't talked to in like 4 or 5 months or whatever the case is. But that was the rule. I was going to reach out to somebody. I was going to do coffee or drinks, and I'm footing the bill. And I think that's important, right? Like, hey, I'm going to buy you drinks. Let's go. There are a couple books that I've read that I really like that are non-traditional to like tech and Silicon Valley. One is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. It's a really good way to like understand that sometimes you're just being a bitch and you need to suck it up, right?
It's a good one.
The second one's Extreme Ownership. I think Jacko Willick, that one's really good. It's all about like having humility. I think when I started in the Valley, I was like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I would tell customers off. Now, like I have the mentality of like, no, like, I'm sorry, like the buck stops at me no matter what. Even if one of my employees is messing up, I'm the one that's going to apologize, and I'm going to be genuine about it. And just having that humility has been really good. So those are the 2 2 books that I've really liked. And I think it's helped.
I mean, and then also post YC, obviously you don't have that say, you know some of those people still from that, which is great. Are there any like networks or anything you're part of, or like how do you approach kind of like meeting and talking to people, like, you know, Lucas, for instance, like how do you do that now?
Yeah, so I think I will always offer to intro people to other people. Yeah. And I think when you're willing to do that, people are willing to do that for you. So it goes both ways. Sure. The second thing is, I mean, just getting more involved with some of the communities down here, but also understanding where you're using your time. So I'm always willing to give my time. Like, hey, I'll come mentor. Hey, I'll hold office hours. Or hey, I'm like, look, I'm serious about this. Like, happy to talk to any companies you want. So as you continue to like lend your time, people will bring you into these groups, and you'll understand which groups are really good. So I think it's more about what you can do for other people, and then from there you'll end up networking, and you'll end up getting a lot more intros and things like that. So I think that's thing number one. Thing number 2 is just don't be afraid to send a cold email. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. One thing I did love about YC is you can email any one of their partners and they'll email you back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're a lot better than I am about that. Even if they don't know you, like they will email you back. Even if it's like Michael Seibel, the CEO, he'll just email you back, and he'll be like, yeah, you know, let's talk or whatever. And that was the most impressive thing. No ego there, honestly. So,
jeez, looking back on like your career so far, like why did you become an entrepreneur?
It's a good question. I think my mom was like a refugee from Cambodia. She was like involved in that genocide. I'm not gonna lie, like I had a decent childhood. Like I never worried about money, but I did see a lot of like things when I was a kid. And I remember the youngest memory I have of this was I always wanted to make money so that none of my family ever had to work, and healthcare bills would get, not that we had any crazy anything, but I just didn't want anyone to have to worry. So that was motivation number 1. And then number 2, I like realized really early in life that I can't have a boss. Like I just can't. It's not for me. It's not my personality. So if my dad always told me, if you're not going to have a boss, you better make enough money so you don't have to have a boss. Yeah. Right. So I think it's those things. And then I just fell in love with it. Honestly, like the struggle, you know, once you've like hit some success, you kind of miss like struggling, like eating pizza at like 2 a.m. and like hanging out with the guys and girls and like just coding and sending emails and like worrying. But yeah, it's just been a really good journey. And I also think you meet some of the best people you'll ever meet in your entire life. You'll meet people that are going to do big things, and you meet people that like really see life differently than everybody else. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And there's so many obviously benefits to being an entrepreneur, but it's not for everyone, clearly.
100%.
But some people you know if you are or not. Like you kind of have a feeling, and then you test it out too. Yeah. That's true. That's true. With your company now, one of the last things I'm just kind of curious about is how are you spending your day now, like day to day? Every entrepreneur is different. I'm just curious on your day to day, week to week. How are you spending your time like within your company to grow Pivot CMO?
Yeah, so lots of calls. I'm on the phone pretty much all day, whether it be current clients, whether it be like just advising companies, whether it be with people like Lucas, just chopping it up, seeing how we can like help each other out. So that's lots of phone calls is one thing. We also do a lot. I also still do client work. I think it's important that I do client work. It keeps my brain sharp. I understand what's going on. And again, going back to the whole like staying genuine thing. And then, just a lot of like research and things like that. I think in the evenings, after the dog and the girlfriend go to sleep, it becomes a whirlwind of what's new out there, testing new ideas. I also am investing now. So we're investing some stuff. We own some small businesses. So that'll kind of happen at night where we're looking at proposals and things like that. So
with that, you mentioned like real briefly, that's at nighttime typically. The separation, especially if you're trying to juggle multiple things, can be so difficult. How do you separate? Do you just know that during the day that you are going to work on Pivot and then it's like, oh, whatever time I've left? Or like, how does that?
No, I mean, the Pivot stuff happens at night too. I think what I've recently been doing is just blocking blocks for certain things and naming that on my calendar. So that way people can't book times on my Calendly link. And then because my calendar tells me that I have to do this one thing for an hour, I'll do it. So I think being consistent about that is really good. I also think like baking work into like monotonous tasks. Like I have like a desk next to my stationary bike now. So like I can actually get a workout in and, do emails or whatever the case is. So that's the way I've been able to do it. Not a whole lot of good system yet, but I think like using the calendar is probably the best way to do it.
I feel like I've asked that question like other entrepreneurs in different interviews I've done, and it's always like the calendar has to be like number one.
100%.
It's the only way you do it. Otherwise, like there's no possible way. It's not real unless it's in the calendar. It seems like
switching costs is real, so it's important that you block and you're like really disciplined about it.
Yeah, it's the only way to kind of manage that. And then with that too, so you have like kind of your day-to-day schedule and tasks and everything. And you're managing multiple things now with angel investing. When do you take into account like the big picture, what you're trying to do moving forward, big goals? Is that something you set and you know where you're trying to get to? Like, how do you approach that process too?
So my business partner is really good about this. We'll do dinner like once or twice. Like we see each other all day, but we'll still do dinner like just us once or twice a week. And he always asks me, so what are we doing? Like, what's the goal? What's the goal with the company? What's the goal with, with the investments? Like, and has that goal changed since we talked about this last? And we have these like real conversations about it. And I think that's really important. The fact that we do it consistently every single week is really important. Look, the goal at the end of the day is always to make money, right? But along the way, it's like, how do we reach more people? How do we, foster more entrepreneurship? If we foster more entrepreneurship and more good founders out there, more investment opportunities, there is like, good things there. But those are the main things that we're always looking at. And I think just keeping your eye on the ball, is really important. And having that like self-reflection pretty often is good. Yeah,
consistently seems to be a better thing. If you can consistently schedule it in, whether it be the calendar or whatever, I think weekly is helpful. I always tell people with like fitness stuff, it's like if you can do something daily, whatever how low it is, like it's just the habit of doing it, then you don't have to think about what it's just like you just know you're doing something.
Exactly. Like even for 10 minutes, we'll do that too nowadays. Like him and I, like his commute's short, mine's long, so I'll call him on my way home and we'll just kind of like, hey, how did they go? How's everyone doing? Are the employees happy? Great. If not, like, how do we make them happy? Let's just, let's just go down the list type of a thing.
Yeah, that's helpful. And kind of just wrap things up here. So is there anything else you'd say or advice or comments on entrepreneurs trying to grow their businesses? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think start small is the biggest thing. Like make $100 before you make 1,000, make 1,000 before you make 10,000, make 10,000 before you make 100,000. I used to be one of those founders where, we went and raised some money and then we had maybe like $2,000 a month in revenue. I'm like, yeah, my company's worth, whatever the valuation was. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's a bit of a stretch. So I think, and I also get founders on the phone that are like, I have $100 million business opportunity for you. It's like, okay, well, have you made any money yet? No. Okay. Well, look, like, go make $100. Like, just go sign one customer, have them come on board. And I think that's like really, really important. Just crawl before you walk is the main thing. And then number two, like, talk to as many people as you can. Like, just learn as much as you can. Become like this really big sponge is really important. So.
Yeah. And where can people go to get in touch with you, reach out, work with your business?
Sure. You can reach out to me directly, Shawn at pivotcmo.com. That's SHAWN at pivot, PIVOT, I'm pretty good about email. I try to keep it at under 10 unread a day, which is really hard. But I will respond for the most part if you email me, pivotcmo.com. You can reach out to anyone in our company as well, and we have a pretty good culture of responding, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Shawn, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out Startup 2.0 from Spark XYZ. If you want to learn more about startups and investing, you can check us out. Join the ecosystem at sparkxyz.io.